Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running.
It's hard to believe that we've been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
So many great conversations over the years about so many great movies. All that said, producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes.
Becoming a Next Reel member gives you access to all sorts of additional and exclusive content. Plus, you're helping us keep the lights on. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership, where you can learn more about becoming a member, which costs a measly $5 a month, practically the same as one fancy coffee drink. And you get so much more.
Every month, we record a bonus episode exclusively for members. Those episodes cover movies from whatever series we're covering at the moment, or add to previous series.
Some movies we've covered that only members get to hear us discuss include The Blues Brothers,
The Russia House,
Naked Lunch,
Independence Day,
The Hot Rock,
and Relic, the better one. Plus, members get to vote on what we're going to discuss for those episodes.
We also record additional pre- and post-show content in regular episodes that only members get to hear.
Like conversations about similarly themed movies.
And answering listener questions from our live member chat.
Speaking of our live member chat, we record almost all of our episodes in Discord, where members can chat right along with us live.
Members get access to other members-only channels in our Discord community as well. On top of all that, members get all episodes a full week earlier than everyone else in a private Next Reel feed just for them that includes all the shows in the Next Reel family. The Next Reel, the Film Board,
movies we like, Sitting in the Dark, and more new projects on the way.
To top it all off, members don't have to listen to ads. We've already eliminated those annoying, dynamically inserted ads that, let's face it, we all hated.
We are listening to you.
We love podcasting for a living, and those ads help to pay the bills. Now, we're counting on you, dear listener.
We promise. We aren't going back to those terrible, dynamically inserted ads that don't relate to us at all. All we ask is that you consider supporting the Next Reel family of podcasts with a membership.
Again, it's $5 per month or $55 per year. Just head to thenextreel.com/membership.
thenextreel.com/membership. Get your access to early, ad-free episodes with bonus content, member bonus episodes, and access to member channels and live streams in Discord by signing up today.
Welcome to the Next Reel Speakeasy, part of the True Story FM Entertainment Network. I'm Andy Nelson, and that over there is Pete Wright.
Hello, Pete Wright. Wait, I'm Pete Wright.
On the Next Reel Speakeasy, we invite a guest from the industry to join us, and instead of serving up their favorite cocktails, they serve up movies that they love so that we can all talk about them. We'd like to welcome our guest to this episode, cinematographer Tami Reiker. Hello, Tami.
Hi, how are you?
Legendary Tami Reiker. That was, you undersold Tami Reiker, Andy.
That's true. Award-winning cinematographer, the first woman to win the American Cinematographer's Award for, I believe it was the premiere episode of Carnival. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Carnival. Yes.
And certainly somebody who has done a lot of TV, film work. How did you get your start as a cinematographer? Like, what was the thing the impetus in your life that said, that's what I want to do, and got going with it?
Well, I started with a passion for still photography. I mean, I did still photography since, I don't know. I think I got my camera when I was 10 and spent the last 2 years of high school in the darkroom every day. And it was funny. I went to a school where you had to wear uniforms. We wore kilts. And I spent so much time in the darkroom wiping my hands on my kilt that it was stiff as a board.
It's destroyed.
And how it looked like that. There was no more piece left. So I went to NYU Film School and thought, I wanted to study film. I still was taking photography classes at the new school, but quickly fell in love with shooting films and started shooting student films. And after I graduated, shot actually a lot of Columbia grad films. And that's where I met Lisa Cholodinko, Maria Magenti, and quite a few. There was a whole collective in that indie New York world then. Tamara Jenkins, Dolly Hall.
Some of those early films you did, like the Incredibly True Adventures of Two Girls in Love and High Art. Those are two of those early films that you did that, had a good amount of kind of buzz and conversations in the indie film world back in the mid '90s that certainly drew attention. And I'm sure for you, it was a great kind of jumping off point for moving into other projects, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. High Art definitely is sort of what kicked my career into gear. I was shooting a lot of films back in that time period. Also, the indie film world, every band had a music video, and that's where I also got my start. I bought a 16 millimeter camera, an SR1, because I had been working as an assistant professionally just for a little while, and I was like, I don't want to keep doing this. I gotta get this rolling. So I borrowed money and bought a camera, and I would just, I'd be like, you pay me or pay for the camera, either one, or pay neither one. Shot hundreds of music videos all over the world. That was fascinating. It was really fun. I had a connection in Jamaica and shot a lot of reggae videos. I'd fly down with my camera and shoot all kinds of music videos.
It's funny, IMDb kind of has started getting music videos listed, but it still is very thin as far as what's on there. The only one that is on there is the I Miss You video for Bjork.
Right. Isn't that funny? Of all, I've shot videos for David Bowie. So many people, and that's the one that ends up, or Lifestyles of the Ramones.
Yeah, right. Well, what's so funny is that, like, it invariably, it doesn't really matter how many videos you've done. If there's a Bjork video for a DP, it's going to be in the IMDb page. For some reason, Bjork is like catnip for IMDb.
Yeah, I love Bjork. That was I have to just tell you a funny story about that shoot. So she had been traveling, as she always, I'm sure, does, all over. And she comes to set, and the director was like, I don't like what she's wearing. And she was like, Tammy, why don't you just look at my suitcase? And she opens that. She brings me into that. She pops open this suitcase from months of traveling. And she's like, pick something. So I'm rifling through her unwashed clothes.
Oh, jeez.
The right colored T-shirt for her to wear. It was so funny.
I'm curious as we get into specifically, we're going to be talking about this movie, John Cassavetes, A Woman Under the Influence, and it's the movie you picked to talk about. And I'm curious as we sort of lean into that conversation, when you began to use camera to influence story and the way story impacts others. Noticing your work across the ages, there are DPs that shoot the script, and there are DPs that have an influence on the way the story impacts the viewer. And I find very much you are the latter from my experience of watching your work, whether it's TV, videos, whatever. When did you realize you had authority in the storytelling process?
That would be high art. Yeah. I mean, before then, it definitely, on student films and music videos, especially on student films, you're a huge part of it. You are the backbone, the cheerleader, you're like the glue, because there's not very many, your crew's small. So you're the cheerleader for the director. You're like piecing it all together. So you have an influence, but it was on high art when Lisa and that's where I first really studied Women Under the Influence. We watched that movie like 20 times. We were just in love with that film and that style and how it can be, the camera work can be in a way so simple, but have such a great impact. It's all handheld and it's just being in the moment and following. I think a lot of times filmmakers get hung up and we have to have dollies and cranes and this and that. And you watch that film and you're like, and you see these pictures from stills from the film and you just see, the cameraman in the corner of the living room, or I think it's Cassavetes in the back of the truck with the kids, with his kids.
Right.
And you're just in it. And that's what I love so much, is just being in it, and following the action. And there's so much movement in that film,
As a comparison point, one of the more recent films that you did was One Night in Miami, which also takes place in a space, largely. And I think it's just very interesting hearing the way that you describe that and how they captured that with the decision process that you went through is how you shot that. And you're like, we're in this space, but I really want to put the camera up on a jib arm and have it so it's kind of floating around as opposed to a handheld option. And I mean, you could certainly have gone that route, but I think that there was something, I don't know, I guess the way that it felt like it put me into the space in the floating. It just felt a little more like, less obtrusive. And I don't know if that's the right word, but, I felt like I was more part of the conversation as opposed to like, part of the raw emotion of the scene. Was that an element that you thought about as far as like how you chose that as opposed to something like handheld?
Regina and I, that was not, she didn't want it to be handheld, just the boxing, and just the whole time period and the four of them in such a tight space. And then the decision to shoot Alexa 65, which is a very large, heavy camera. But again, I wanted to be in that little space. And so we chose they're older jib arms. They've been running around forever. Just a big piece of steel, but you float and move with them, and it gives the operator the control. You're there to react and to keep shifting the perspectives. And so that, that was, we had these two massive pieces of steel crammed in this little room, and it worked. It was just a dance, and it was that you could hear a pin drop after each take. I mean, everyone was and we did, again, like Women Under the Influence, they weren't always cut that way, but we did 10-minute takes because the script had so much dialogue.
Yeah, it makes sense. And
like that dinner table scene and Women Under the Influence, I mean, it just holds for so long. It's fascinating how that's something that like we forget as filmmakers. It's why I love to watch this film with directors before we start shooting, to just remember how engaging it can be just to hold.
Let's start talking about that. We are going to talk a little bit about the TV show that you worked on that's going to be airing right around now on Apple TV Plus, Surface, that Gugu Mbatha-Raw is starring in, who you also worked with on Beyond the Lights, a fantastic film. But let's save that for a little bit later. I want to get into this film, A Woman Under the Influence, and just kind of talk about it a little more.
This is Mabel. Come on out here, honey. For, everybody, there's Mabel for everybody. Mabel! Mabel's not crazy. She's unusual.
Tell me what you want me to be, how you want me to be. I can be that. I can be anything. You tell me, Mabel.
Mabel's a delicate, sensitive woman.
And the reason I'm worried is that
you've been acting a little strange. I wonder if you've been aware of that or not.
This is what I call a really handsome face.
That's enough.
Okay, come on, let's dance.
No.
Look at this muscle. I
That's
never
enough.
saw such muscles. I bet he didn't fit in a suit.
Maybe.
Come on.
You had your fun, it's enough.
Vito Grimaldi.
Get your ass down!
And like your friends.
I know it. I know that.
I'm not one of those stiffs that you like with their noses up in the air. And boom, boom, with their noses up in the air. Oh, awfully nice.
Billy's looking at you this way.
It's a challenging film, and looking at what John Cassavetes is doing in the way that he's kind of depicting the mental illness, or as they would just say, I'm crazy, whatever. The handheld aspect of the storytelling works exceptionally well for that. The performances, of course, and Cassavetes' own style, all of it really comes together in a very kind of powerful way in this film. And I can see how it's something that you would be drawn to. It's a tough film to watch, though, and to go through. I imagine it's one that for me, I feel like I need a breather afterward.
Yeah, definitely. You know what? It was funny watching it again. I watched it again last night, and I thought, wow, as I get older and being a mom, it's heavier and heavier for me. I think like when I was 25, I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah.
You're not really feeling her pain. You're, as much as you get older and you have more experience and you have your own children, and suddenly like it's just at the end, and then just the cycle of it's just going to keep going on. I personally you feel for her so much more.
Feel for her and for him and for the mom, and I mean everybody in here. And I think when I look at this film, it's hard to characterize my feelings about it because I love the film and I don't enjoy the story. It's hard. It's hard enough to watch that when I'm watching it because I marvel at the performative aspects of this film, that this other human being can take me to such a place through just performance and just raw emotion, both for Peter Falk too, as the blue collar dad, just trying to exist in this universe of such emotional and sort of behavioral turmoil. That struggle is extraordinary, and that they capture it with such long lenses is amazing to me, right? Because it's normally I'm looking at these scenes and I'm thinking I'm sort of a part of it, right? I'm the One Night in Miami example is fantastic because I feel when I watch that movie like I'm in there with those guys, right? I'm in the room bearing witness, and this I feel like I'm surveying the family, like I am outside, like outside a window staring past a shoulder, and it is gets to that point I was trying to get to earlier, using the camera to as an agent in the storytelling. This movie nails it just out of the park.
And it's just watching it. I mean, so when they're having their fights, and when she slaps when he slaps her in front of the children, but also the in and out of focus, and they're just, people are falling in and out, and sometimes it's so beautiful. She's actually very soft in the background, and she's the one talking, until it slowly racks in. You just feel like they were just fly on the wall living in the chaos of it all in that small house. Doesn't seem like a very big house at all.
Right.
Dining room, bedroom choice.
Yeah. That didn't make sense until the closing shot, the credits shot, when the world just sort of resolves back to normal and they start pulling the furniture around. Yes. You start making sense of how the scene is blocked. What is it about that film? Like I'm so curious the reaction that you have with directors when you introduce the film as a way to describe sort of the way you see film.
I mean, I would say it's very interesting because at first maybe they're hesitant, like we're not going to do long takes like this, but you're like explaining that it's just that the story can play, and that you can just follow characters and it becomes so alive, as opposed to, like I said, the dolly track and the overs and characters can speak and you don't have to see their face. We know they're in the room. We can hold. You feel in this film, I don't know, but you feel like, they didn't cover everybody's line.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And that, and that's another thing, just show, you don't have to cover everybody's line. We get really caught up in, did everybody get their wide, medium, tight?
Yeah.
Right. I get a sense from conversations now about the film that, they did a lot of rehearsal. It wasn't improv. They actually really had kind of worked it all out. But the way that the camera moves and everything, it really feels it feels improvised. It feels like the camera person is just trying to find the shot and everything. And I don't know, I guess that really struck me when it was the two of them in this stairwell and they're kind of silhouetted and, and he's talking to her and it's just, we just end up getting so close that it almost is like they're blended together. It's like, who am I looking at? And the way that it was, it just kind of like, you get this sense of these two characters are really kind of the same. It's this husband-wife being that they are. But I don't know, just the way that came together, it was really beautiful in how it kind of portrayed a relationship and the struggles of a relationship and kind of this whole idea that, we all have a little bit of madness in us. And that was something I found so interesting in the film is the portrayal of madness and the decision of who's mad and who's not, or who's suffering from some form of mental illness and who's not. And the way that we kind of latch onto her as the person who's really kind of dealing with this sort of stuff and the decision to send her off to this institution, when you kind of read that everybody has these things. And I think so much of that for me comes partly from the title, A Woman Under the Influence. I mean, because before I had ever seen this film, I always thought it was about a woman who was suffering through alcoholism. It's
substance abuse, right?
And then when I watched it, I'm like, oh, okay. And then I was like, well, that's an interesting title. I guess it's really about all of these influences that she is taking on, and she's trying to figure out, what do you want me to be? And she says that. She's like, I don't know who to be. I found that to be such an interesting portrayal of this woman trying to figure herself out but through the lens of the other people and how that to them ended up making it seem like she was mad.
Right. Through, her parents and her children and right. Yeah.
And her husband and her husband's friends when they come over.
Right. And all of their influence on him, that she's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised, not surprised, to hear that Cassavetes had originally written this as a play. Because apparently Gena Rowlands wanted to be in something about exactly these pressures on modern women at the time, and then couldn't possibly imagine doing 8 shows a week. And so they pivoted and decided to go for it as a film. That is, one of the things I think is so remarkable about how the film is presented to us is that at no point do I get a sense of proscenium in the house, right? At no point does it ever feel like a play. It feels like I'm living in this house with these people. Do you ever get a sense of that when you look at these adaptations from play to screen?
Oh, definitely. Miami was, and that's so daunting when you first read the script. It was, pages and pages and pages of straight dialogue without a single movement.
But again, I don't ever get a sense of proscenium in that in One Night in Miami. Not once does it feel like I'm watching an adaptation. What goes into your head when you're looking at how to shoot it?
I mean, a lot of that was working. Kemp did a great job of bringing you inside and outside the hotel.
Sure.
When we were shooting, that was really important us to keep that sense that there was a world outside. So that it didn't start to feel like a play. It was funny when we were starting prep. I said, would it be important for me should I watch the play? Because they had, recordings of it. And they were like, not really, but you can. And I watched it and you're like, no, there's nothing. It's so different,
Okay.
So speaking of directors, and I mean, like you had worked with a number of different directors, but looking at Cassavetes as a director, like when you look at something that Cassavetes has done, What do you? I mean, and he's also acted. I mean, he's a very prolific storyteller in all the different fields. But when you look at something like this, what do you feel like as the director he's bringing to the table and kind of putting into this story for you?
Oh, I think orchestrating it all. You just imagine how intense that must have been. I almost imagine him like, you know, sometimes when the camera was so, nudging the cameraman or something just to keep the chaos going, or forcing them like, you're going to stand in the stairwell and this is how it's going to be, You feel his hand in it all.
And I think in the script too, and that's something that I think that I am fairly weak on my Cassavetes film knowledge. I need to watch more of Cassavetes films, but I find when I do watch them, I enjoy that they have such an intimate, connected feel with the characters. And that's something that I really get out of watching his projects, particularly with Gena Rowlands and Peter Falk, two people that obviously he worked with a number of times. Let's talk a little bit more about the performances in the film. When you watch these two as a husband and wife, what are you taking away from them as like, what are the performances and what are the actors giving?
Well, I mean, this time around, I was just, because usually I'm so in love with Gena Rowlands, and this time it shifted to just Peter Falk's incredible performance, Yeah. I think in your first couple viewings, you're so in awe of her and her character and her tics and her mannerisms and how stunningly beautiful she is. And but this time I was really focusing on Peter Falk, and it's just incredible, his acting and those slaps that just still come out of nowhere, just so jarring and feels so violent.
It's funny, you would look at the title of the film, A Woman Under the Influence. It's like on second viewing, you realize everyone's under the influence. Like he doesn't know how to support her and this family anymore, right? You can just feel him running out of just sort of institutional gas.
Yes. Oh, and when he's in the truck giving the kids beers and you're...
Oh, God, the way he's like, we're going to go to the beach. And he's just dragging them to the beach. There's no joy.
And the principal, like watching them being loaded into the back of the truck.
Right. It's just awful. It's like everyone in this movie feels put upon by the weight of life, right? And it is.
And when he's dragging the mother into bed, get in the bed, and right. He was just like this, like look on her face, like the whole family's crazy.
And that comes across, something that we would do periodically on the show that I think is interesting is we would call it first shot, last shot, where you look at like the first and last shots of the film. It's always a little tricky, but I do think it's interesting as to like how a filmmaker decides this is how I want to start the film and this is how I want to end the film. I think that I think there's something, obviously they have to make that decision in the context of the story at some point. And for this film, Cassavetes kind of starts with Nick at work. We see him and all of his crewmates, like they're laying the pipes in the waterway, doing some sort of work as to what they do. And you hear it starts off with some opera, and then it kind of turns into some of the kind of the piano music. And so we get a sense of Nick's like external world. And I thought it was interesting that we start externally, and then at the end of the film, we end with the two of them, Nick and Mabel, as they're putting their room together. We've already kind of mentioned that, but it's like they've gone through the horrific dinner where they had to boot everyone and all that, and they're starting to kind of like they've reconciled and they're kind of putting everything together. And I love especially the moment where Nick kind of shuts the doors on us on the camera. It's outside, shuts the curtains, and we're kind of seeing the last few shots of them separated from us as they're kind of reconnecting and everything. But I found that to be such an interesting way to kind of start in the film. Did you have any thoughts on that as to like the structure of that?
No, but when you were talking, I was just thinking about the role of that bed in the film. I mean, it's so incredible. Like, I mean, she sleeps with the guy from the bar in the bed, and the whole family's in the bed. That bed is just such a presence because it's in the dining room.
Yeah, you can't avoid it.
You can't avoid it, and it's just such an anchor in their life, and it's downstairs. Normally, your bed would be upstairs. It would take a reason to be in that, Here it was constantly in
I think structurally, Andy, the sort of chaos of the opening scene. There's water everywhere. You can feel Falk's just feeling just awful about himself, that he had made this promise that he was going to be at home with his wife, that he was going to but now he can't because, he's the foreman of a construction crew and the world does not wait for dates. And so he's dealing with all of it. It's just chaos. It's absolute chaos. And then at the end, they're coming down the stairs. They're leading into that final experience of them getting ready for bed. And she turns, and in a voice of clarity that we have not heard from her the entire movie, from opening frame of her, she says, I don't even know when all this started. Like she has this moment of awareness that I felt like I was being slapped. Like, of course, when they're alone together and all of the outside influences have been peeled away and everyone's finally in bed, that she is able to breathe again and use a voice that is more natural to him and remind us for the first time why he keeps coming back to her, why their love endures. That is, I will now get off my soapbox about the moment of joy at the end of this movie. But I found that you talk about first shot, last shot, those constraints, incredibly moving.
I also, like, in that moment also at the end there, you also feel like you wonder what, throughout the film, you're wondering what she was like when they first met,
Yeah.
But get that feeling in that moment that, it always toggled back and forth.
Right.
Just a little extreme for a while.
Right.
A little bit. Well, and I like that you get the sense that, and I think this is something that feels Cassavetes, where things aren't necessarily like, this isn't just a happy ending of a movie. Like, it doesn't just end. I felt like when we got to that end, it will continue. Like, there is more of the story and they will just kind of continue on. And, these sorts of things may happen again. But if we learned anything from the process of going through this with these two characters, is they have a genuine love for each other and are going to figure it out. And that's something that I felt really powerful in the film, is that sense of, I guess I would say sense of hope in the film,
It's funny. I told my wife what this was about. And I said, no, the end is hopeful. The end is hopeful. You'll get there. It'll pay off. She said, screw you. I'm not watching this movie.
It is a long film. It is definitely a long film.
It is a long film, yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting to see that. I mean, Pete, you talked about the whole idea of it being a play, and Rowlands was just like, I don't think I can perform that, that many times a week. It's a lot to go through. And so they shifted to the film, and I guess this is, telling and, frustrating with the way that the world works, but they had a really difficult time finding funding. As one of the producers or the people at a studio that Cassavetes talked to, he was trying to get it. And the person said, quote, "No one wants to see a crazy middle-aged dame." And I just think that's just so sad when you hear things like that, because it's just like, come on, people. So he had to mortgage his house, borrow a bunch of money. And Peter Falk actually loved the script so much that he put $500,000 into the project. And then Cassavetes was like a filmmaker in residence at the AFI and used a bunch of the students there to kind of come and help out on the crew pro bono. And so it was one of these, everything sounds so independent. And, I always love that when people come together to do something that they're passionate about. And, but then of course the whole thing fell to the distribution. And again, no one wanted to distribute the film. And what was interesting is after it played at the New York Film Festival, he ended up essentially starting the four-wall process. It sounds like this was one of the first films where he was actually booking it in these art house theaters, going around and talking with the audiences and stuff. And that's kind of how the film played out in the world, which I found to be very interesting. In the process of kind of doing some of your own independent films, have you kind of felt some of that pain, Tami, as you've kind of gone through?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But then it's so incredible when they become, like the High Art and Two Girls in Love, Dolly Hall were just playing at the New Beverly. They had a retrospective back to back.
Oh, nice.
It was so exciting to see all these young mostly women, young women come and just, they see it for the first time, or they'd seen it on, video. But those two films especially were, just such a labor of love. I mean, Two Girls in Love was $50,000 budget,
Wow. Yeah.
High Art was $500,000.
Wow.
And that was, both of those were filmed.
And both of those, yeah. And then something like Pieces of April. Now that was $150,000 shot on those Sony. Remember, Gary Winnick started that whole independent movie. He made those collectives. So they were all shot on the Sony PD-150, literally held in the palm of your hand.
Sure.
And that film still plays. Like, so many people will tell me, I love Pieces of April. We watch it every Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And when I tell young people today, I'm like, so when Katie Holmes was walking towards me, I had to stop the autofocus, that was the focus. It was literally like shooting, like with your phone. That's how simplistic
That's fantastic.
Those kind of films are so fun.
Of course, you could still get that camera used, and it only has a 3-star rating on Amazon, Tammy. It's not a great camera.
Well, it's all in how the cinematographer uses it, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's what it's all about. Going back to this film, as far as kind of this story here, another element that I found interesting is that in the process of kind of like the trying to get the release, screening it and everything, Richard Dreyfuss actually, he was on a TV talk show with Peter Falk, and they actually started talking about the movie. And I didn't know this, but Richard Dreyfuss deals with bipolar issues, and I guess he found it to be very powerful. And he said it was the most incredible, disturbing, scary, brilliant, dark, sad, depressing movie, and said, I went crazy. I went home and vomited. Which I think that when you watch a film like this, you can see how this reaction could come about, because it really does put you into the heads of these characters. It was very powerful, but that's something else that helped kind of draw audiences to the movie. And I think it makes for an interesting draw to find people, or to get people to want to come see this.
Everyone wants to see what will make Dreyfuss throw up. Although I get the feeling that he could throw up anytime he wants.
My favorite scene in the movie. It's a tiny. She is waiting for the bus. It's just so beautiful and so well shot and simple. She's walking up and down the street waiting for that school bus in her manic kind of panic walk and that long lens, and it was brilliant. I thought you could just watch it forever. Her pace. Was this the same scene where she's asking strangers for the time? Yes. I'm waiting for my kids. Yeah.
Frenetic. Don't you have a damn watch? Yelling at people. It makes me wonder,
dusk and then they're the only kids on the bus when they finally
It does make me wonder. It feels so naturally Cassavetes. I'm assuming that he was just across the street and those people were just people, right? That she was just asking strangers.
It certainly felt like that. They had a camera hidden in a box or hidden somewhere, and it was just amazing. I love those shots where they hide a camera and
so good.
The world coming around you.
Those two women were actually friends of Gena's. So
they play the extraordinary stranger part very, very well. I would add one of the things you said earlier, Tammy, is just how long Cassavetes waits for these shots. It's just like that dinner table shot, how long it is. The other thing, he operates at the other end of the spectrum too, and the way he handles cutting is extraordinary. That doctor scene when they're trying to sedate her and she keeps raising her fists and punching and all that, it's so fantastic. The final shot of that scene, the doctor says, I have a paper here that says, and he cuts. And that is another scene that feels like, somebody just slammed on the brakes and the seatbelt's locked up for me, because of course I know how they're going to finish that sentence. Right. Of course they've built up to that perfectly, but they don't let us see it. And it's a magical bit of treachery, like visual treachery, that just works.
Well, and speaking of those scenes, I think both of these scenes are powerful examples of just what the actors are bringing to the table. I mean, watching her go through both, and they're interesting contrasts in scenes, because in the manic kind of like panic that she has when she's waiting for her kids on the street, there's like this sense of real like confusion and like, what is going on with the world? Where's the bus? And like it almost is like, there's this sense that she thinks like, did my kids get on the wrong bus? Where are they? Like, she is so panicked about it. And she's just waiting for the regular bus to arrive. And it's interesting the way that plays in comparison to that scene that you were just talking about, Pete, where she is actively kind of being like attacked and like held down so that they can take her away and sedate her and stuff.
Right.
And it's
cornered. Yeah.
Yeah, she's very much cornered, and it's horrific. And actually, that scene plays really interesting. The way that I loved Peter Falk and the kids in that scene, how he cannot get those kids to leave the mom, and he keeps like grabbing the kids and taking them to their room, and they keep running back to her. And, but the way that he had to like figure it out and come around to the different way to approach the scene with the kids and have her come up, and it's just like everything, it was masterful the way that story unfolded through that, and the way that the actors, and this is something that I think Cassavetes really knows how to do, is to allow a scene to play where the actors go through so many ranges over the course of it. It was a wild ride for sure.
Can we talk about new stuff?
Yeah.
Do we get to talk about new stuff? I'm very excited for the new stuff, Tami.
So what was we're going to shift for a little bit now. We're going to talk what Tami is working on, or what you just worked on, and it's actually going to start airing, as I said, on Apple TV Plus around the time this airs. It is the show Surface. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah. So Surface stars Gugu Mbatha, who I worked with in Beyond the Lights, and she actually recommended me. And I had a Zoom interview with Sam Miller, and who I loved I May Destroy You. So I was so excited to meet him. And he is just so creative, and so really wanted this to be visually different and handheld, and even though it was an elevated, very stylish world they lived in, he really wanted it to try to push it to the extremes to capture what she was feeling. She's a woman who has lost a significant part of her memory due to an accident, and so now she's back in the world, but is not quite sure who to trust her best friend, her husband. She's not sure if the story that they're telling her, she doesn't remember anything. So she's putting the pieces together by what they tell her, what her life was like. And her life was very fancy and beautiful clothes and beautiful home and country house. She doesn't quite feel that she's that person. So we use the swing and shift lenses a lot to play with the focus, and so that to blur the edges in the same way that she was seeing the world very blurry.
Just for our listeners, can you describe what the swing and shift lens is, and what sort of image do you end up getting from it?
So the lens is actually on a bellows, like it was for a still camera. We started using them. We used to use them all the time in music videos. Matt Mahern really made it famous in all of his Teen Spirit Nirvana videos. So you have the ability to put half of the frame, a quarter of the frame out of focus by literally swinging and shifting the bellows on the lens. So you can selectively choose what you want to be in focus. So back then, when we used them on videos, we did not it was extremely difficult to pull focus because the operator had to pull focus. So until recently, amazing camera assistants have devised a way that they can pull on their Prestons, their remote focus, because now these days we stare at a monitor. We don't pull off the lens. These person stares at a monitor and pulls focus. So that was really a game changer for using it more in narrative. It's still very tricky because when a character moves, obviously it's amazing for still photography, or if it's just one locked off setup and you're like, I want the whole bottom to be out of focus. Okay, but now when I walk closer to you, suddenly my whole face is out of focus. So, but now having the ability to pull focus and keep changing which part of the lens is out of focus has made, it's still tricky. There was still definitely moments where you play back a take, you're like, well, her mouth was completely gone. You can see someone, it's hard to see someone talking for too long with their mouth is just completely
out of focus. Yeah, suddenly it's not art anymore.
Right. You're focusing on that, just one.
I'll tell you that using that swing shift lens was the first two episodes is extraordinary, and the way it captures, if you can't place where you might have seen this in use, consider, when you see a shot where a cityscape looks miniaturized, right? For those who are listening, that's another sort of trait. When you use this lens on a landscape, you can, create that miniature look. It's really great for, I use it for architectural photography, allows you to shoot really tall buildings and make sure everything's in focus. It's really great. But
a big film example would be Social Network of the boat race. The boat race in that was done.
Little tiny boats.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. The range of use of that lens in these first two episodes is extraordinary, Tami. I was forehead smacking myself. I kept thinking, she is so bold to be playing with this. I cannot imagine that
was Sam. Every time I would, because, you think at any moment someone's going to be like, enough of this.
Yeah, right.
Like, we're came down from Apple.
Well, but in context of the story, and this is why I was like, of course they chose this method to be a part of this story about this woman who is dealing with this amnesia and not being able to remember everything prior to this accident. I'm like, it was such a smart way to inform us of this closed view of the world that she has. Like, she just can't. There's nothing out there. And I found that to be so interesting. And there are some shots that just are really striking in the way that, she feels so separated from everything, the way that you were using that lens. I mean, it was really exciting to see. Yeah.
The more we would usually shoot, two cameras, one with we used the tribes, the Blackwing 7s, these new ones. They're old glass and refurbished, so they pull focus easily and they were such a beautiful match to that. But every time Sam and I would be looking at the monitor, we would only be watching the swing and shift. We'd be like, it's amazing. It's mesmerizing, especially when we were shooting the exteriors of San Francisco.
Oh, so luscious.
We rented a double-decker bus for a day to do so many without actors to do, and it would just miniaturize the city. We were just like, wow, especially as the sun was setting and you're on those hills.
Yeah.
It could bring something in the background so close to you that it looked like a miniature set.
Yeah. It really is perfect for the set of the story. It makes San Francisco come alive in a way that I've never seen quite that way. Like, you see these movies and shows that transform cities that I am quite familiar with and make it something new. And I think that's one of the things that you're able to do here.
Yeah, those lenses in Chinatown were so cool.
So cool. Cool.
We also used a lot for when she's seeing when she's waking up in the hospital and her husband is out there. We both love the diving bell, butterfly and the diving bell. What is it called?
Diving bell and the butterfly.
Yeah. So I read that Julian Schnabel used his own eyeglasses. So I had the prop department go and get me all these different eyeglasses. So prescription. So I found the ones with the biggest ones, and I would put those in front of the lens and just be twisting it when she was waking up. And when she was on the gurney, I was running with the gurney, twisting it. And again, I kept looking back at Sam. I'm like, waiting again for someone to be like, enough already.
Enough. Apple said stop.
Nobody did.
It's fantastic. I love a comment on reflecting on working with Apple. This feels very much like you're already in the MCU, right? You've got your Cloak and Dagger credit, which was a great episode, and now you're working for Apple. It's a brave new world, these streaming services. What's your experience working on a show like this?
Well, I mean, Apple was really fantastic. They were very, they care very much about the visuals and to be interesting and strong. And, all the Apple shows are. They're very visual, So that was exciting.
It's got to be nice, being in that space where you're working with a director who's exciting to collaborate and play with these tools. I mean, we talk about this on the show quite a bit. It's like when filmmakers take advantage of the full range of tools that they have to tell their story in a creative way that kind of enhances what we're watching. It's very exciting, and we don't always see that, but those moments where we do, and I think it speaks to what we have just been talking about with Cassavetes and A Woman Under the Influence, and this, and how you and the director and Apple as kind of the people who are behind it allowed it all to kind of come together to create something that really stands out, and it's pretty exciting to see.
Yeah.
After this, what are you working on now? Do you have something else that's in the pipes?
Yeah, I'm starting the morning show, season 3.
Have you done You haven't done any of the morning show yet?
No.
Oh, I'm very excited to see you on the morning show. Can you tell me a little bit about how it works? How many? So you just did 2 episodes. You did the pilot and episode 2 of Surface, and how does that work in terms of you defining the look of the show, and then how does that work with you coming on a show like the morning show that already has a strong sort of visual?
This will be the first time I've come on to a show.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it do you have, because a show typically has the Bible, and this is kind of the characters and all this. Is there also something for you as far as this is typically the types of lenses we like to use with the show, and this is the look and all of that, or are you allowed to kind of say, well, can I play around with some things as I come into this season?
Yeah, they want you to play around. They want to,
Okay.
Certain things have to stay the same.
That's awesome.
So it is interesting. It'll be the first time that I come on to something that is already established.
I'll tell you, Tami, we think you're extraordinary. Thank you so much
for
you. Hanging out with us.
Fun.
You have an amazing eye, and just the stuff that you capture and the projects you've worked on, it's all just very exciting and such interesting projects. So keep it up. Do you have a website or any place where people can look at the stuff that you've done, or I don't know, do you use social media that you post photos or anything?
My website is on DDA Talent.
Gotcha. Okay. We will put that in the show notes, and I guess that's everything. So, Tami, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We had a wonderful conversation. For everybody else out there, we hope you like the show, and we will see you next time here in the Speakeasy.
Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Hemp Foods European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way.
I love having these wonderful chats on movies we like with all these industry guests talking about some of their favorite movies.
So many great conversations on that show about so many great movies.
We have so much fun having these conversations, but producing the show week after week does require a lot of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these incredible conversations.
The Originals page at thenextreel.com/originals links to the source material for all the adapted film discussions on the Next Reel's family of podcasts. Purchasing through our links supports the show.
It's your one-stop shop for Amazon and Apple links where you can buy your copy of the original source material.
Original material for movies we like, movies like Casino Royale,
The Silent Partner,
Never Let Me Go,
Silver Linings Playbook,
There Will Be Blood, based on Upton Sinclair's Oil.
I believe it's Oil!
Oh yeah, I forgot the exclamation point.
Plus, by using those links to buy your next read, Apple and Amazon show us a little bit of love, which allows you to support our family of shows with minimal effort.
thenextreel.com/originals. It's a great way to support the show and find your next page turner.
That's right. Head over to thenextreel.com/originals to pick out your next read and dig in today.